Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Transition Bay. We're going to wait just another minute or two for other people to join. A very exciting event this evening. Dandelion Cuisine with celebrity chef David and also heroic herbalist Deborah. So we're covering all aspects of dandelions. And the joke this evening is we're also talking about invasive vegetables. How do you like that? Okay, they certainly figured that part out, those dandelions. Okay, I think there's just a couple more people joining. My name's Robert Cervelli. I'm one of the co-founders. I want to say a little bit before we get underway about the transition movement, which we're part of. It's an international movement. It started in England in 2005. The whole idea is working at the community level, grassroots, to help communities build more resilience for changing times globally, particularly around the environment, economy, and energy. And as you know, there's a lot of change going on. So there's a lot of communities worldwide stepping up and looking at how can they build skills locally, particularly around food, around energy, housing, and a lot of other issues. That's what we do. I would encourage you to sign up for our newsletter if you haven't already. You'll find out about all of the events like tonight and like a lot of other events that we've got planned for the rest of the year. That's the best way to keep track of what's going on. I also want to say that we're very open for donations. That really helps us get a lot done. There's a donation button on our website, transitionbay.ca. So please go there, have a look around, some great videos and a lot of other content. And the other thing is we're also always looking for volunteers. A lot of activities that we're doing, and the more hands, the better. You know how that goes. So I think with that, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce both of our guests. First up is David Wimberly with the chef's hat on. Not easy to miss in the gallery there. David is one of the co-founders of Transition Bay. It goes back 11 years now. Been very active the whole time. Really one of the, I'd say, keystones for the whole organization. David, by trade, is a flute maker, which is quite an interesting workshop. And I would like to ask everyone to go on mute, please. Unless we will have discussion period at some point and you can come off mute and ask some questions. But being on mute would be greatly appreciated. So David tonight will be giving us some recipes on dandelions. He's got his own greenhouse, and the only person I know that grows dandelions in his greenhouse. So we'll hear more about that tonight. I'd also like to introduce Deborah Luscombe, a seamstress, organic gardener, environmentalist, death doula. She helps a lot of people with that process. She tells me 45 years working with herbs. So I would think learned a few things along the way. And the last 15 years, more particularly working with Savea Jerome, who's a well-known herbalist in the province here. And Deborah grows a lot of her own herbs. So we're going to find out the spin on herbal dandelions here as well this evening. So I think I've probably said enough by way of introduction, and I want to turn it over to both of you. So please go ahead.
Deborah, will you start the slides?
Will do.
So today we're going to have a wonderful exploration of dandelion love. Dandelion is one of the top cuisine items for me, both as food and medicine. It's an extraordinary plant that we should give it a lot of good energy. Um, so it has a long history. It is the widest variety of uses of any herb that I know of. Every part of it is available for food. It's beautiful and it's fully naturalized here. It's now, it may be a settler, but it's now completely a resident here as a wildflower. Next slide.
Oh, interesting. It won't go.
Aha.
Yeah, we didn't have this problem before.
Sometimes, Deborah, you have to go back out of screen share and then come back in.
All right.
And I didn't mention, while you're working on that, I didn't mention that if you've got questions along the way, one way is put them in the chat box and we'll be monitoring that. The other way is we may be pausing once in a while for some discussion and some Q&A.
No, it will not go. Let's see what I can do.
Nothing at the bottom? Well,
no, nothing.
Try doing it before you go on screen share. Just advance and go back and forth a bit.
Yeah, but then it was working fine earlier, but isn't that always the way it is? When we tested it, let's try again. All right.
Okay.
So you can see this wonderful picture of the dandelion, all parts of it, flowers, leaves, root. And as David said, it's now naturalized here. And its jagged leaves, as you can see on this slide, earned it the name Dandelion, lion's tooth in French, but it has another French name. David, do you want to share that with us?
Well, dandelion is famous for being a diuretic. So with the French kind of sense of humor, they call it pissenlit, or piss in the bed. Never made me do that, but.
And we'll talk more about all of its herbal properties later. So let's see if it'll advance this time. No way.
No.
How interesting that this is happening. Huh.
I saw it in the background there, the little thing at the bottom left-hand corner. There.
Ah, how wonderful. Okay, David.
Okay. Immigrant status. Well, today with all the people who want to immigrate to North America, what is the story with the dandelion? Well, first off, it's just joining its cousins because dandelions is a broad family of plants. Now, we're used to the common dandelion or sometimes the red-seeded dandelion, but there's other native dandelions that have been here for a long time. So it came in on the family reunification plan now. It was an earlier settler, came in with the Mayflower. What was that, 1620? I'm trying to remember when I was there. Anyway, no, 1520, 1540, 1500s. So it was early and it liked it here. And it's now a fully naturalized citizen of this area. It's now a wildflower. It's not a noxious herb because, well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, you know, it's been around for many hundreds of thousands of years. In fact, many millions, in fact. Started in Eurasia for the common dandelion, became one of the top herbs and food plants, And so that the first people who moved here on their own as, well, one of the first, the Mayflower people, brought it here with them because it was so important. And here it is now.
And it's a member of the aster family. You all know asters.
Yeah, which all have that same kind of shape of flowers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Deborah, you're going to tell us about its importance for bees.
Well, no surprise. Because this is one of the earliest flowers to bloom, following, I think, the Mayflower and coltsfoot. It's just beginning now. It's the bees that have been hibernating all winter. It's the first food they can get. And we're not talking about honeybees, which is a very tiny part of our bee population. The wild bees, it's really important for them.
And there's lots of other pollinators that need this too, and other plants and animals. It is so important. And we'll talk more in a minute about what it does for the soil. Okay, let's talk about that right now. Well, the dandelions are a survivor, and they're also a real giver. Because if you put, dandelion seeds almost anywhere where it's disturbed ground, where it's not a fully formed forest, where it's really unnatural, that's where they want to grow. Sides of the road, those crazy, stupid things we call lawns are just perfect places for it. And it even has settled into my own greenhouse. I didn't plant them there, but there they are. So I get the first ones there. Dandelions can help remediate the soil. They will absorb toxins and process them. They cycle nutrients from deep down in the soil and bring it up. They create ventilation, like plugging your lawn so that it can breathe. They do that. They're just amazing plants, and they really play well with others. They don't take over. They don't destroy their environment like a true invasive plant. They like to get along with everybody and help everybody. They're a good model citizen.
And as we've been alluding, they have amazing nutritional properties. The whole plant can be used, and we'll talk about how to do that as we go along. But I mean, look at this. Look at the vitamins. Vitamin K and A and C, huge amounts. Iron, copper, calcium, and very low calories and almost no sugar. Really phenomenal food, phenomenal food. Anything more to say about that, David?
Well, and this is just the flowers for here. I see Christine was asking that. We'll get into some of the nutrition for the leaves as well in a minute, but this is just the flowers. And in fact, some people say that the flowers may be the most nutritious part of the dandelion, but boy, every part of it is just wonderful. In fact, we have a comparison coming up that will show, well, that's here. We're not going to play this video here, but we encourage you to go to this link when you can and watch the video. Just an amazing young man.
Oops.
Going so happy, loving the dandelion and the dandelion flowers. And he'll take you on a great deeper dive beyond the vitamins and the minerals and the ordinary nutrition. But so watch it and have fun with this enthusiast.
David,
okay.
Oh, good. You put it in the chat box.
I just put it in the chat. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm hopefully going to remember to do that each time, but remind me if I don't. All righty. So these are David's favorite leafy greens and mine as well to start the spring. I mean, they're the first ones. So David's going to talk about, and they're beautiful. Look at those colors. And crisp and bitter. They're a little bit bitter, as you know, so it's good to mix them with some other things. David's going to talk about their nutrition, I think. Let's see. Oh, I want to say one thing, actually. You can also grow, there's something called Italian dandelion, and it's actually the chicory family, which is very close. It looks very much like this, and you can grow it in your garden until the first heavy frost. We'll talk a little bit more about chicory later on.
Yeah, it's quite prolific, and it's one of my favorite things to grow in the garden now, because the dandelion leaves, the dandelion greens are best when they're young. They're best before the flowers have turned into flower heads, seed heads. So at that point, I usually switch over to the Italian dandelions. And by then, there's so many other things growing in the garden. But for right now, these things are such a welcome shot of lovely green energy. Now, we often think of carrots as being this superfood. Well, if we compare carrots to dandelions, so the dandelions are on the left-hand column, and the right-hand will be the carrots in each of these three categories. And you can say, well, for vitamin A, dandelions have a lot, but carrots have a bit more. But everything else in that column, the dandelions are considerably more than the carrots. And you get into minerals. And there, every one of the minerals, the dandelions have more minerals. And in the macronutrients, they have more energy. They have even more fats. They have more proteins, about the same in carbohydrates. And beautifully, there's very little sugar in them. Now this is an important point, because our bodies often want to judge a food by how sweet it tastes now. And by doing so, we're saying that we don't like all the other nutrients, because it's the other nutrients that have these complex, strong flavors. Even an apple that's more bitter or a more broad palette of flavors is going to be more nutritious than the sweetest one. So Honeycrisp, not so good for you. Good old common green apple, way better. So, and even dandelion greens even are more nutritious than kale. Oh my goodness. Now, kale is way better than carrots, so it's a more even contest, but dandelion greens just edge out the kale as well. So eat those dandelion greens, eat them early and often.
And I want to come back to the vitamin K, which, as you can see, is bright green. Vitamin K is not an easy vitamin to get in food, and this is a perfect place to find it.
And you get all this right at the first thing in the spring, when you haven't had any homegrown greens for so long. And then all of a sudden, if you've managed your yard properly and haven't killed these beautiful godsends, you get it.
Okay, now comes the really fun part. This is David's recipe. Chef David is about to share his omelet making with us. And let me remind you that all the recipes that you see here, we're not putting them in the chat, but you will be able to recover them if you go to Transitions Bay's website and look one more time at the recording of this program. You'll be able to stop the show and copy these recipes. And you can always talk to us. Okay, David.
That's right.
Here you go.
I have my own particular way of making a French omelet. And I do it this way because I can get more ingredients inside of it. If you make it the fast, thin way, well, you don't get as many ingredients. But if you do it like this, you can really have a lot. Like for instance, you see there that I have an entire large colander of dandelion leaves. Well, it's amazing when you steam them down just a little bit, how much in volume they are reduced. So you can really fill up that colander. And if you're making 2 of these, you really need it just heaping full. So your first step is to go out and pick a whole bunch of fresh dandelion leaves, wash them, and lightly steam them either in a steamer or just in your pan. Just put them in the pan, put a few drops of water, put the lid on, and it'll be right down really quickly. Just barely cook dandelions like this. Don't put them in boiling water. That ruins them. You'll lose all the vitamins and it makes them bitter. You just need to barely steam them down, or even saute them with a little butter if you'd like. I take up if I'm gonna, my basic ingredients are lots of dandelions, a couple of eggs, maybe 3 eggs if you're making a big one to share with a friend. Some cheese that's gonna go on the top inside. You can cut it in strips if you don't want to grate it. A little bit of chopped onion there on the side. Add some garlic to it as well. Some chopped tomatoes if you'd like, or whatever else you want to put inside your omelet. Salt, pepper, spices, chilies, green peppers, whatever you'd like in there. Okay, so next. So you beat your eggs and you saute your onions down just a little bit and set them aside. And then then I would pan saute in my chopped up kale. There, it's already melted down.
Not kale, David, dandelions.
Oh, gee, dandelions, yes, right. Well, I do the same thing with kale too, but dandelions are my favorite. And so you're just putting them together in the pan, mixing them up together a little bit, and then putting them aside outside the pan for my recipe. And then the next stage, you would take some butter and put it in your pan when the pan is hot enough that the butter will sizzle and sear. And by that sizzle and sear, it gives a unique flavor from the butter doing that. If you put other things in there, it just doesn't do the same. It's still enjoyable, but butter is special for that. And once you put in a good dollop of butter in there, it's seared, then you pour in your beaten eggs in there, swirl it around really gently just by using the pan. Don't use the spatula. The spatula will cut through and make the omelet stick to the pan. And then cook it just a little bit like that. In fact, if the pan is hot enough, it's going to cook like you see in the left-hand picture faster than you can then reach over and add the other ingredients. So on half of the omelet space, I will put down the dandelions first, and then some cheese, and then some, in this case, chopped up onion, and the tomatoes and whatever else you want, chili peppers, spices. Now you can add your spices right here at this point, or you could have added the spices right to the beaten up eggs if you want. That's another nice way to do it.
So David, you saved some of the dandelion then out? You didn't stir it all, you didn't saute it all with the onion. You obviously saved some for inside the omelet.
No, after I mixed it with the onions, I put all that aside onto a plate.
Oh, you didn't put the egg in with the onion and dandelion mixture. Oh, see, I'm learning something too.
This is really important.
Okay, different pan. Got it.
Yeah, or just put the mixture of the chopped and sauteed ingredients onto a plate.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Or a bowl, something. So and then put them back on there, put the cheese on top of the dandelion, onion, garlic mix, and whatever else. Mm-hmm. And then I put the lid on it for just a minute, and I turn the heat down right away. And you can see here, I mean, I've already taken it off of the heating element, but generally I just turn it right on down to low, put the lid on, and just long enough that the cheese will melt. Next. And it has the lid on it in there. And then in a minute, I take the lid off and I use a spatula and flip it onto one side like that. Maybe add a little bit of decoration on it. You see on the left hand, I've decorated in one way. And on the left hand, I've gone even more all out. The one on the left, well, I saved up a little bit of dandelions for the top, and I had a lot more ingredients. Mm-hmm. I think on this one, I might have added some salsa as well. I love hot foods, but that's an omelet big enough for 2 meals. Share it with the one you love. And if you eat one of these omelets every day, you'll be able to keep the apples for later.
Well, I have to tell you that I have on occasion been privy to the other half of the omelet, and they are extraordinary.
Yeah, there's other ways of making omelets, and they will work with this. But I do it this way, so I can really put a lot of stuff in it. Because anyway, this stuff is so big, you can see it's hard to fold it over. Sometimes you need 3 eggs if you're really going to put a lot of stuff in there. Anyway, I'm enthusiastic about this. And I have a special guest here that these are just from my garden greenhouse right now. I picked them this afternoon. And maybe a little bit later when I'm full screen, I'll introduce you to these 3 lovely baby dandelions. but they're the special guest today.
Thank you, David. Bob, oh yeah. So, omelets aren't the only thing you can make with dandelion greens. I make dandelion pumpkin seed pesto. Here's another recipe you might want to come back and copy. Last year, I was privileged to be able to turn my whole front lawn into gardens, and it was filled with dandelions. Lucky me. So I got to make dandelion pesto and dandelion omelets and dandelion, everything you can imagine. In fact, the whole plant, well, I'll wait until we get into herbs for that. So this is I couldn't eat enough of this. I'm so sorry that I made 3 huge batches of it, and I had 2 in the freezer, and now they're all gone, and I can't wait for more dandelion greens. But it's also something you can put inside an omelet or on a pizza. I mean, absolutely delicious, especially with pumpkin seeds that have been slightly roasted and lots of fresh garlic.
I've had your dandelion pumpkin seed pesto on a pizza, and I was astonished. That was so good.
Yep, pretty yummy. All right, and there's more.
Dandelion fritters. I first got really interested in dandelion fritters when I was talking about my omelets with a mother who said, well, whenever she tells her kids that they can have dandelion fritters, they are sure to want to help harvest the dandelions, and they want to be there and they'll eat them all gone right away. They just love it. So here's a simple recipe for dandelion fritters. Basically, you're taking flour, the dandelion flowers, and some flour, some eggs, and some milk, and making standard fritters. Now, but you know, there's a lot of similar things that you can cook this way. You don't need to even make a fritter if you just want to eat the flowers. You can saute them in butter very lightly and just eat them that way. Oh my goodness, it is so good. And in fact, there is a German woman who wrote an entire book about dandelions, and her favorite dandelion recipe was to lightly steam the flowers and the flower heads. From maybe 10 minutes or less, lightly steamed, and then add butter, or you can just saute them butter and then put them on fresh toast. And you can add other things to it if you'd like, but just the dandelion flowers on a slice of toast in the morning, you're eating like a god or a goddess.
And oddly enough, even though there's very little sugar in dandelions, they are sweet and amazing. And you can put them on anything, you know, saute them and put them on salads. Actually, you can put them fresh on salads, or put them on, you know, decorate the top of your omelet with your sauteed flowers. Oh, they're delicious.
And in fact, anything that you would use steamed spinach for, you can use dandelions. You can make a dandelion casserole. Mm-hmm. You can just anything where you'd use steamed spinach, you put the dandelions instead. It just opens up worlds of pleasure. And after you eat dandelions, just feel how good you feel, because you've gotten some of the best nourishment you can ever do. And you can't buy this good of stuff in stores. You can only get it for free just by being nice to your neighborhood dandelions.
Oh. And then, of course, there's salad. Using your greens fresh with any kind of ingredients you like in salad. Now, I personally always mix it with other greens because it is bitter. And the bitter, by the way, is really good for your digestion. It gets things moving in your digestive juices that normally don't. It takes a little extra bitter. That bitter flavor changes the way your digestion occurs. It starts in the mouth instead of waiting. So I add, believe it or not, kale and mustard to my dandelion greens and my salad, and maybe some red cabbage, anything you like in salads. And of course, top it with those beautiful flowers.
And I'll give you a recipe for a salad dressing. You can make it home that you can do it. So I'll wait until you talk about your, you can tell us how to make one of the ingredients for this recipe.
Well, you just reminded me that I also use in my salad dressing, I use dandelion flower vinegar, which is just rife with minerals and vitamins. And this is just, I had a jar full of flowers and I filled it with apple cider vinegar and I let it sit for about almost 30 days, 4 weeks. And then I strained out the flowers. So there's pollen in here, which is why it's cloudy. And this is amazing stuff.
So you can make your homemade dressing that is so simple. So you put half your favorite vinegar, and if you're lucky enough to have what Deborah has made, that is ideal. But just a really good flavorful vinegar, and then olive oil or hemp oil. Hemp oil is
avocado oil.
Avocado oil, yes. Or even adding a few drops of sesame oil into that for some flavor. And then you put in some maple syrup, or honey,
just a
but
little, just a little.
yeah, just about half of the bottle. No,
No, just a little.
just a little. Yes, that's right, because it's going to be very strong. And then I get a commercial mix of mustard seed and horseradish. And I put a couple of 3 good solid squirts into when I'm making a bottle of this stuff and shake it all up. And it is just an extraordinary complement to the, what you have there, because there's no longer even a hint of bitterness, and all the flavors marry together. And it's time to celebrate garden goodness.
And I had a little bit of Bragg's in my dressing on top of all those wonderful ingredients, and then put roasted sunflower seeds on top of the salad.
our pumpkin seeds too.
Are we at a place where we should take questions perhaps before we move on? Are there any questions?
Well, I can tell you some great stories, Deborah, David, that are coming into the chat box.
Well, at the very end, we wanted to save for everyone to share those stories about their favorite dandelion use.
Yeah, and Tony Antonucci, if you want to come online, tell your story, come off mute, that would be fantastic, about growing up in Buffalo, New York, with your Italian parents and going out on the university lawn to pick dandelions.
Yeah, that was, my parents and my grandparents, they had a farm south of Buffalo. My grandparents grew grapes for Welch's grape, and also grew vegetables for the canning. There were some canneries there, but yeah, every Sunday we'd go out and have to pick have to go along and pick cardoons and dandelions to eat, and we'd have them throughout the week. And it was always funny. The students would see us all out on the lawn, and they thought we were the landscapers picking the weeds. They couldn't envision that people ate this stuff and whatnot. But yeah, it was kind of this session tonight kind of reminds me of the stuff we had to endure sometimes growing up and eating that no one else that we knew ate. So,
wow.
What parts did you eat?
Pardon?
What parts did you eat, Anthony, of the dandelion?
Well, we just about everything. I mean, I remember even in college, my wife at the time making dandelion wine with a group of people and stuff. But a lot of, what you talked about in eating omelets, and same with the cardoons and stuff like that. We would put them in an egg batter and cook them and have them and we'd bring them to school, which everyone would look at and say, "What are those?" And stuff. But
wow, great story.
But we, that's what we, how we grew up and lived.
Lucky you. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of dandelion wine.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, here is a recipe for dandelion wine. And we encourage you just to go there and read all about it, and give yourself a little time. It takes a year or two, they say, to get really good. But dandelion wine is a magical thing, and it's really worth the trouble. In fact, you could, if you have kids, you can trick them. You could say you're picking dandelion flowers for fritters, and then save half of them for dandelion wine. Ha 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 ha.
Oh, I just put that this link in the chat.
Yes. So, and dandelions, you can preserve them in lots of different ways. Making the vinegar, you can You can dry a lot of the different parts of it. You can.
Oh, we're
freeze
about to
it.
get to that.
Am I jumping the gun?
Yeah, as usual.
What, me?
So, as you've discovered from listening to this so far, all of the dandelion can be used and all of it has nutritional value. So here's a little bit about the medicinal value. The whole herb, every piece of it, is primarily a liver stimulant and a diuretic. The leaves, as you can see here, are rich in potassium, and you saw a bunch of other things they are rich in. Liver and digestive tonic. And again, the bitter piece comes in there. The root, again, is a liver stimulant. And the whole plant is good for inflammation, but especially the root. Any kind of inflammation, which as Westerners, and the way we live, we're rife with inflammation of all kinds. Especially in Nova Scotia, I often have lung problems, which is inflammation. And the flowers are mineral rich, as we've already said. So some of the things, some of the ways you can save these, besides the vinegar that I mentioned for the flowers, you can also do the same thing in oil, like olive oil. You could fill a jar with flowers and olive oil and let it sit, and the olive oil will leach out the nutrients. And then you can use that oil for skin conditions, topical conditions. And if you add a little beeswax to some of it, you'll have a salve. The leaves and the roots can be air dried or dried in a dehydrator. And I just dry the fresh leaves. I let them air dry. I just tie them up and let them air dry and use them for tea, simple tea, just steeping the leaves for 10 minutes in boiling water in a teapot and straining the liquid out, and pretty much daily. Turns out it's wonderful for heart issues and high blood pressure as well. You can also, with the whole plant or the root or the leaves, make a tincture. I have a tincture in this tiny little jar that's the whole plant. And I am doing, because I've recently had a problem with my blood pressure, I have a little bit of this every day. And you can put this in water, which is usually what's recommended, a dropper fill. But it's even better if you can stand it to just squirt the dropper into your mouth and swish it around, believe it or not, because of you're getting the fullness of it. You're not diluting it, and your mouth will react to it, and a whole digestive process will start immediately. But that's not for everybody. The roots can be dried. This is a jar of dried root. You can hear, I think you can hear. And used for a decoction, you actually have to simmer them because they're roots, which you have to do with bark too. It's a harder material. And they are good. The tinctured root especially, or the decoction, are good for gout, eczema, acne. I use the roots in soup base. My soup bases usually start with some kind of mushroom, some kind of seaweed, and either dandelion root or burdock root to get the herb and mineral rich base in the soup. And we talked about the flowers in vinegar and oil. You can also do the same thing in honey. You could fill a jar with honey, a jar of flowers with honey, and have then a dandelion honey. So you get a mineral rich honey. And I just learned this, the white sap from the stem can be used on warts. And this information is not hard to find, although I have my favorite herbal books. Here's my very favorite author, Penelope Odie, The Complete Medicinal Herbal is my favorite book, but there are many, and you can find this information online. It is not hard to come by. And you can take Saveda's class too, which is really wonderful. The other thing that happens with roots is that they get roasted. And I'm sure you've heard of this. This is a coffee substitute. I have not used this as a coffee substitute myself. I prefer chicory, which is the other green we talked about that's related. Italian dandelion is chicory root, which I actually mix with my coffee and have for years. My early years were spent in Louisiana. It's a habit there. And it changes the taste of the coffee. It enriches it. It gives it an earthy, sweet flavor. David, you've had my coffee with chicory, haven't you?
It's lovely. And I agree that the thing is, it's just more complex.
It's more complex, and it's mineral rich.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like I'm hogging the mic here. Then there's magic. And we all know about dandelion magic. We grew up with dandelion magic. Remember? Making a wish and blowing those dandelion seeds, which actually are their magic all by themselves. The way they move and the way they're shaped. Really extraordinary little critters. They are, it is said, because of their wonderful, beautiful yellow flower, masculine solar energy. However, when they become seeds, that fluffy white ball, it becomes more of the feminine lunar energy. And of course, they're seeds, right? They're going to go out and multiply. And we know, as I said, we know all about making a wish and blowing the seeds. Apparently, it is said you can also blow away bad habits or anything that you want to leave, change. And a flower, the yellow flower under the chin, if it reflects yellow, apparently means you're going to be wealthy. I didn't know that one. Dandelion, as you can imagine, is associated with growth and transformation, which is exactly what it does in soil and what it does in our bodies when we eat it as food or as medicine. It's transforming. Apparently, the dandelion root tea aids in divination and prophetic dreaming. So dandelions for eons have not only been eaten and used for medicine, they've also been used for spells and ritual work involving luck, love, wishes, balance, hope, and happiness.
Now, take a deep breath. Breathe in the lovely energy of the dandelion and blow it out. And let the seeds disperse and make a wish. What do you wish to add to the world? What do you wish to find? How do you want to find that masculine or feminine happiness or whatever you want? Let the magic of the dandelion carry your wishes floating away on the magic umbrellas of those seeds and make a wish. And I know my wish is that everyone here will now want to cultivate dandelions. At the beginning, Bob said I'm the only person he knows that has dandelions growing in their greenhouse. But in Europe, it's widely cultivated and sold in stores, in corner markets, and we don't have the North American psychosis of seeing this as a problem. This is an opportunity, a way of healing our world. So now let's share our favorite uses of dandelions. How do you like to cook your dandelions? How do you like to eat them? How do you like to drink them or share them? Or what do you want to say? Let's have a conversation now. And we'll open it up. Just jump in or we'll read some of the chat.
Don't hesitate, anyone, to jump in with any comments, anything that you've grown up with, that you're doing yourself, whatever it might be. Don't be bashful. So Elizabeth wants to know, how do I get more dandelions in my lawn? Now, there we go. That's probably the first time I've seen that. You know, after this talk, David, Deborah, I'm greatly appreciative. It's amazing how much of a bad rap dandelions have had. Let's face it, a complete bad rap here. And it's amazing what you can do with them.
And that's only since people started to have the private little estates and big lawns. It's just very, very recent. And it promoted the pesticide industry and the lawn fertilizer industry. And in fact, my really good friend, biology professor David Patrickan, did a study in Halifax in the late 1990s that I visited. And there he was looking at how to do organic lawn care. And what they found was that there were two things that the lawns needed in order to be healthy. You needed something that would bring nitrogen in there, and red clover was the best. So you wanted to seed red clover. But the other thing the lawns needed was some natural way of providing aeration and to bring nutrients up from deep below. So you need deep-rooted plants to do that. And the best is the dandelion. There are others, but the dandelion is the very best one. So if you want to get off toxins, dandelions.
But there was a question about how do you get more dandelions in your lawn? And that's a good question. If you don't have dandelions, it's either been poisoned or your soil is really, really healthy. But I would, find dandelions that are going to seed and blow them into your yard.
Yeah, Elizabeth also asks about if they're growing by the roadways, whether or not they're exposed to toxins. And I would have to say probably.
Yeah.
Coming off of both diesel and gas exhaust.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there's no leaded gasoline anymore, so we don't have to worry about that, but there's a lot of other stuff. So
right.
Anything close to busy roads, you probably should avoid.
Right. But there was a question about is this the common yard dandelion? And yes, it is. It's the one people are always digging out of their yards. So if you're going to dig it out of your yard, eat it. Make medicine with it. Now, I live across from Point Pleasant Park, and there's lots, and they don't use any pesticides there. And there's lots of dandelions there besides my yard. So, you see them everywhere, but along roadsides is not so great.
So some comments from Carson about boiling dandelion leaves and making them bitter. David, you said not to boil them, but Carson finds that fully boiled dandelion leaves taste almost identical to spinach. Any comments there?
Well, in my experience, by the time I boiled them enough that they went past the bitter stage, then they had lost their nutrients and flavor.
Yeah.
But then I generally eat my dandelions when they're young. I try to pick young dandelions so I don't have to fight off the bitterness.
Right. They get more bitter with age. That's true.
And after they've gone to seed, then they're often bitter.
But they're still good for you. They still have nutritional value after the flower's gone to seed.
Oh, and you can take your dandelions and make a really good fertilizer out of it.
Oh, right.
So you can just take a whole bunch of dandelions, every part of it, the roots and everything, put them in tubs with water, leave them outside for a few weeks, stir them up, and then you can pour the liquid wherever you need a home fertilization. And so you've got all those minerals that they brought out from deep below, and that fermentation process that will happen really enriches it. You can do this with lots of different kinds of materials, but I think dandelions are a primo one. So even when you don't want the dandelions anymore for some reason, then you can still make a good use of them.
Right. And I want to come back just for a second to the boiling them until they don't taste bitter. That's not a problem as long as you drink the water that they were boiled in, which has all those wonderful minerals that made them taste bitter in the first place.
Exactly. And I mentioned before that it's the bitterness is the taste of the vitamins and minerals. So
it's good for your gut biome, really good for your gut biome.
I could see how boiling would inactivate a lot of the vitamins though, but you'd still certainly get the minerals.
Well, but if you pour the water off, you pour the minerals off. Right.
True. Yeah.
And that's why I would typically very lightly steam them if I want them pre-cooked. Or in my omelet recipe, I'm just putting them in the pan with just a little tiny few drops of water in the lid real quick, and they quickly steam and everything stays right there. But I'm not pulling anything away.
Well, here's a nice recipe or something like that. In Austria, they had boiled potato and hard-boiled eggs and pumpkin seed oil to dandelion leaf salad. They add boiled potato. Oh, yum. And here's another one. Dandelion, a Korean student who made dandelion leaf and sweet potato noodle dumplings. Divine. I can imagine.
Wow.
Oh, goodness, that sounds really nice.
Oh, cardoons or burdock. Oh, that's so good to know. I love burdock.
And Carson wrote back that he still likes the taste of the fully boiled ones. And I'm very happy that you do, because that's certainly better than not eating them. And a lot of people grew up with being forced to drink a dandelion tea tonic, where it was really boiled and boiled and boiled down, and it was just super bitter, and they just got such a bad feeling about dandelions because they were made to drink that tonic, which I'm sure was pretty good for you, but I think our ways are better to get the more benefit of it. And if you want, just go to the God realm and just eat flowers.
Now, one thing I appreciate, can jump in here, is I keep bees. And, bees, it's their job to know what's flowering out there. That's what they do. They go up over a mile foraging, and they know everything that's blooming, where and when, and all of that. And they're just now bringing back in the very first nectar, probably from heath and heather, and maybe a little bit of coltsfoot and some other stuff. But the big nectar flow is when the dandelions start blooming. And it's like alarm bells go off. And the hive, you can just feel the energy. It's like all hands on deck at that point, and they're going crazy. And I suspect that's where a lot of the pollination, that's where it quickly can go from that flower into the seed head because of all of that visitation. And if you go out on a if you go out on a nice sunny day in a field where there's a lot of blooming dandelion, just keep your eyes out and you'll see not just honeybees, but you'll probably see a dozen other kinds of bees. Some of them look like tiny little flies, but these are could be wild solitary bees, lots of different species, but everybody's hitting those flowers because there's a lot of little tiny, where each seed is going to develop that is tiny flower with a separate little nectar pocket in there. So it's quite fascinating just to watch what the bees are doing with all this.
Ooh.
Bob, I have an interesting story on that. Or I'm a beekeeper too, and so I have some hives on my property. And years ago, I used to mow my neighbor's lawn. She was an elderly woman, and every May, that's when the dandelions start to bloom. She'd start calling me and saying, "When are you going to come over to mow? When are you going to come over to mow? I got to get rid of the dandelions." And I push her off because I wanted the bees to forage on them for a while. And she never knew I had the bees there, so she didn't put one and one together. And it was always a struggle with her to finally mow it. And then she did the chem lawn thing where she had people come in and spray, and I always would try to convince her not to do that, but she always did.
That's a good point about chem lawn, and I should warn everybody, if you're going to planning to go out and pick dandelions, and it's not on your property, it might be a public property or wherever. If you see the flower, the flower comes up on a pretty tall stalk. If you see that stalk curled, some cases even like into a whole circle, but at least if it's curled, don't touch them because they've probably been sprayed with an herbicide. That's why they're curling like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, it's sad.
So I'm going to show one of my lovely friends here. And an interesting thing is when I dug them up here, instead of in the pictures, you see just one root sticking down, but all the ones that I dig up, they don't have just the main root, but they have all these side roots. And on the pictures, you usually see one flower, one head on it, but the ones that I dug up, this one here, it's divided into two. I don't know if you can see that well enough in there. And then it's divided again here, and there used to be another one there, and there used to be another one there. And each one of those is a separate head. And so you look at that one, and you look at, this one is more classic, but it used to have another head here, because this head just has one big one here sticking up, and it's about to flower. Little flower heads coming up, starting up. But again, It's got lots of different roots and they're curled around. And here's the biggest one of all that I have. And it was so deep in the ground, I couldn't get more of it. But it was split into two big ones and a huge root. I couldn't dig down deep enough in it. It went right in underneath my raised beds. Knew where the goodness was. And here it's divided into two. You can see there.
Uh-huh.
And this one is divided into two as well. That's just another interesting thing that you'll find about it. And
I wonder if does that have anything to do with the richness of your greenhouse? That it would do that? I haven't ever seen them do that.
Well, also, it's in a rich place. It's
right.
These are several years old.
Right. Right.
These, I sacrificed my plants to show today that I've been in my greenhouse about 3 or 4 years now growing. So they come back.
Sacrifice. You're going to have a couple of omelets. It's no sacrifice.
I will. I'm going to have a good feast here. And
hi, Susan.
Does anyone else have some more recipes that they want to share or some comments?
Scott Brown put a great recipe into the chat box there. Scott, are you available? He mentions a warm salad, sauteed red onions, red peppers, toasted walnuts. Then you toss in the greens with spinach, dress it with olive oil, lemon juice, little lemon zest, and top the whole thing with crumbled goat cheese.
I love it.
Wow, yeah.
I'm going to copy that right now.
And, I keep thinking of the chart you put up at the beginning of all of the minerals and the vitamins, particularly vitamin K.
Yeah.
That is an extremely important one that's really kind of hard to get in our diet.
Yep.
I didn't really appreciate it. That's probably one of the richest sources that I think we could point to in some way. So that in itself really makes it almost like a tonic to go for fresh young leaves.
Yeah, I know in the spring when I start eating these, I'm eating them like they're medicine because my body just needs fresh local greens. No matter what I buy at the store, it doesn't do what the dandelions do, the first ones. I'm going to remind people that the chat and the recipes there, you can easily save by going to the bottom of the chat box and you'll see 3 dots in a row. And if you don't already know this trick, just click on the 3 dots. And the first thing there, you can see save chat. You click on save chat and you'll have it saved elsewhere. You can go back to it later. So this is a good chance to do that for all you dandelion lovers.
Oh, right, because we put those links in there too. Elizabeth is asking if you can freeze the leaves and flowers, do you need to blanch them? I think I remember freezing the flowers when I made dandelion jelly until I was ready, but I've never tried greens. I think you can freeze the flowers unblanched, or I would anyway, but the greens I would blanch for sure, like you would spinach, and then put them in an airtight bag.
And this person who's the German dandelion book author, she said she tried the flowers both blanched and fresh, and she prefers fresh. There's more flavor there, and you don't have to do anything. You just put them in and let them and freeze them. I think in terms of the leaves, it's a matter of how long you're going to keep them, right? If you're not going to keep them very long, then freezing them is okay for fresh leaves.
Well, what it does, because of the moisture in the leaf, it just changes everything. I don't know. That's an interesting question.
But it does it over time.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I've
I
got
think
a
Patty
question.
asked a question. But did you have a question, Patty?
Yeah, it's okay if you need to go ahead first, Robert. I can hold my question.
Please.
Oh, so I was wondering if any of you have had, or if maybe any of the participants have had any success with adding any of the part of dandelion to juices, to cold pressed juice. So like I quite often will use, cilantro or parsley, but maybe I could substitute some kale for, like, obviously you wouldn't want to just do dandelion because it would be too bitter, but I wonder, has anyone had any success?
Yes, it's wonderful to add to your juices. You get all those amazing minerals. I haven't done it with flowers, but the greens, absolutely.
Yeah, it seems like the flowers would work.
Probably. They might add a little sweetness. Let us know.
I'll give it a try.
And I've got a question. We, with some of our herbs, lovage, I'm thinking of in particular, we dry the leaves, then we'll powder them like in a food processor or something. Mm-hmm. And then in the wintertime, add them to soups and things like that for flavoring. Mm-hmm. Is that something you could do with dandelion leaves?
Absolutely. It's the same as making tea, right? You've got dried leaves and you make a tea, but you can also put your dried leaves in soup. Yeah. And you'll add all those minerals.
Okay.
And the root too, the dried root is amazing to add to soup bases.
Okay. And another question, I may have missed it. I had to duck out for a couple of minutes. I've heard somewhere along the way that the roots can be a substitute flavoring for coffee.
Oh, you missed that slide. Yes.
I did miss that slide. Yes.
Roasted. They're roasted and the same as chicory, which is a relative. They're roasted and either added to coffee or used as a substitute. Yeah, roasted and ground.
Okay, thank you.
Do they taste like chicory?
Yes. A little stronger. Dandelion's a little stronger.
And as we said, the leaves of the chicory plant are called Italian dandelion, at least one of the varieties of them. And
right. And I meant to put that in the chat, actually, where you can get those seeds.
The Italian dandelion seeds.
Yeah, let me find that.
Where's my seed packet? I don't have it right in front of me, but I sent you the photo of that.
Yeah. But you mentioned early on the Italian dandelions in the chicory family, but the imported dandelion, the lawn dandelion, is in the aster family, was it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
But they're definitely connected. I mean, they're related somehow. So there's the West Coast seeds is where you can get, the only place I found in the country to get Italian dandelion seeds.
And the packet has a lot of seeds in them too. And it lasts at least 3 years, I read. And they date their package.
And mine are now about this big.
Oh, now, I should warn you, deer love Italian dandelion.
Oh, man, they do.
Yeah.
Gwen is asking, how long do dried roots retain the vitamins and minerals? That's hard to say, Gwen, but rule of thumb with roots, you can keep them for a little more than a year. This would be good. I should ask Saveda. Greens, only a year, but if you tincture them in an alcohol base, forever. If you tincture the roots.
What about dried flowers?
Not more than a year. And again, if you tincture them, then they will, alcohol has that magic power. They'll outlast us.
Or in honey, thousands of years.
Too. Honey lasts, but you have to refrigerate it. It will, yeah.
Oh, once you have them.
Once you've put the herb in it, you need to refrigerate it. Otherwise, other things will grow at room temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then even then, you know, like I make elderberry syrup with honey, and I don't tend to keep it more than a year in the refrigerator, even maybe a little longer because I forget. But
so Deborah, Scott has a question about infusing oil, like a basil oil, a mint oil, and perhaps adding other herbs when making infused oils, like combinations of.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Keep it out of the sun for, you know, when you're infusing.
Any particular combinations come to mind?
I haven't ever done combinations. The oil that I tend to make the most is comfrey. And then I make salves. I have never made dandelion oil, but I'm thinking I might do it. I think it's taste and nutritional and medicinal needs. But you can always make separate oils and combine them. This is what I do with tinctures. I make separate tinctures of my favorite herbs. And then if I want a tonic, which is a combination of tinctures, a combination of herbs, I put, you know, a little bit of each together in a tincture jar, tincture bottle. Can the infused oil vinegar be kept at room temp? I wouldn't keep the oil at room temp for very long, but the vinegar, yes. Like alcohol, you can keep it at room temperature.
Yeah, vinegars are pretty shelf stable, I would think.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
I mean, this one I made last May. So it's almost a year old.
That the one with the flowers?
Yeah.
Now that's fascinating to me because it's got the pollen in there as well.
Yeah.
Which can help a lot with allergies.
One would think, yeah.
Yeah.
Chicory and dandelion are in the same family, Christine says, the aster family. Thank you. That's good to know.
Okay.
Isn't Professor Google amazing? She knows everything.
That's great.
Yeah, the main thing we can add ourselves that you couldn't find on Google is all the enthusiasm. Although that video I suggested you look at about the health benefits of the flowers, that young man has enthusiasm through the roof. And he's quoting his sources, and he really makes you want to go out there and just eat dandelion flowers till you burst, until you turn yellow and you're your own pot of gold. He's fun.
I appreciated that time lapse of the flower and then the head opening, because I'm a botanist by training, and I could tell after, you know, it bloomed and it got pollinated and then it closed up, and then everything was maturing and ripening, and it had to ripen the seed. It has to harden the seed coat. Everything has to get ready for it to get dispersed. So it has to be like a fully mature form. So it takes a little while for that to happen. Yeah, and you could see it kind of starting to swell a little bit, and then the little cap comes off. And you know, when you're walking through a field of dandelions, you can see them all at different stages,
right?
Which is pretty cool.
I loved all the other critters, all the little insect kind of critters that were enjoying the dandelion head as it was maturing. I thought that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I hope people will want to go out and pick a lot of the flower heads and take them out and blow them around wherever you think that they might be able to grow. That would be a very kind thing. People find lots of lawns right this time of year where they have grubs in the lawn, and the animals come and dig the lawn up to get the grubs. Well, you only have all those grubs if you have a lawn that's been treated with chemicals, because they're June bugs mostly, And if you don't treat your lawn with chemicals, you only have a balance. You don't have very many, and it's not worth the animals' time to dig up your lawn anymore. Also, your grass gets to be deeper rooted, and so if you're letting the dandelions and things grow in there, the lawn gets stronger and it's more resistant to digging up, and there's not an imbalance of the grubs. So if you don't like your lawn to be dug up, mostly by the raccoons, stop spraying to stop the bugs, because you just actually make more bugs by spraying to stop the bugs. It's really strange. I used to have that happen to me a lot when I first moved in, but now the raccoons don't even try, because it's not a good place. You know, they want to get in my compost maybe.
They do love the compost. That's true.
So I'm thinking here, it's middle of April. Things are just starting to green up. That's what I'm noticing. And so I'm assuming dandelions are just starting to green up.
Yep.
And I would think we're getting just about now, the first little baby leaves coming out. Is that, and those are probably the best, are they?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but just remember when you're removing any of the dandelions, don't take them all, because they do have to propagate. And this is true with any kind of foraging. Don't take everything. Take what you need and leave enough that they can continue to grow and propagate.
So digging up the whole plant, or should we just be picking leaves now? Or
well, yeah, you can pick leaves now, but it's you know what kind of damage you're going to do. You know what happens to a baby plant if you take all the leaves off.
Yeah,
it's not going to get very far. So if it's got 4 leaves, take 1 and do that with each of the plants, because it needs to get bigger.
Yeah.
But once the plant gets a lot bigger, then you can go in there and take a knife and cut it off, and
it will come back.
And it'll come back, and it'll come back as a young plant. So if it's got the flower heads and you cut it all off right then, it'll come back as a baby plant with a strong root. So you get many more harvests that way too. It is harvested commercially a lot. And to get those big commercial things, you're not going to get that from seeds really quickly. You have to grow a root a little longer. Anyway, that's
also now the farmer, I've noticed at the farmer's market, there's always dandelions all summer long. Now the farmers are selling dandelion leaves, which is fantastic.
Okay.
So more and more people are using them.
Oh, it's catching on.
It's catching on. It's good food.
Yeah.
And we sure appreciate all these people that have come here to this. And I bet there's a lot of people listening who have their own favorite dandelion recipe. And I hope you're going to go out and have a lot of fun experimenting too. It's hard to go wrong. And especially if you add just a little bit of dandelion to something else, and you'll get used to it. And after you've had it done, you start to say, oh, wow, that was actually really good. So you'll add more and more and more. And then you might get to be like me. So when I make the dandelion omelets, I'm using an entire colander full, a big colander of dandelions in one omelet. And I eat it all myself. So
no, not always.
I share it when I've got a lovely damsel with me.
Thank you all so much for coming and sharing the recipes that you did. They're fantastic. I'm going to try some.
And I've had so much fun doing this because, I found out more. I verified some things that I just heard, and it's even more inspired that this is one of those times when you've got a plant that moved here and is a good companion. It gets along with the indigenous plants and all the indigenous animals, and it doesn't go too far. It's just a beautiful thing. So, I mean, there's a lot of the plants we brought over that are just terrible things like Norway maples and Rosa multiflora and on and on and on, but not the dandelions. They're beautiful. So,
so David, Deborah, we're just about out of time. And I do want to just make a few other comments and announcement about Transition Bay.
And then we'll close with an aspiration afterwards.
Okay, why don't you go ahead? Well, no, maybe we'll do that right at the end. So all I wanted to say was do get on our mailing list. Keep abreast of all the upcoming events. We've got some great stuff. We're already looking ahead into the fall and planning a number of things. A lot of skills of different kinds. We may be doing a preparedness salon, all kinds of things in the fall. So get on our mailing list. Donations are greatly appreciated. You can find that on the website as well. And, you know, if you're interested in volunteering to help out with anything, our educational vegetable garden, all kinds of projects we have on the go, do send us an email and let us know. So David, why don't I turn it back over to you for the end?
Yes. So let's close with an aspiration. And feel this with me. May dandelions prosper. May the use of chemical herbicides, fungicides, and fertilize diminish and disappear. May all beings be happy in community on this earth with us and us too. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's beautiful. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and enjoy those dandelions.
And go grab some dandelion seeds and blow them everywhere.
Thank you all so much. Have a great night.
Good night.
Yeah, good night.
Nice seeing you all. Hi, Britta. Okay, so I'm going to save the chat one more time before we close.
And I'm
Yeah, it's got some good recipes in it.